Right, good morning, Sally.
Morning, Anthony.
It's sunny Britain this morning, isn't it?
Certainly is, yes.
We do get sun here, I do believe. In fact, I think we get more sun here than most people give the UK credit for.
I think you're right.
Right, Sally, this morning we're going to be talking about your crowdfunding campaign and your product. And we'd like to know a little bit more about how it all came about and a little bit of your backstory and why you did what you did. So if you're okay, we can go ahead. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here for some other reason. Are you?
No, not at all. No, it's really clear.
Okay, it's better now for some other reason. Okay, well, Sally, give us an idea of where in the UK you live.
Okay, I'm in Somerset, about 10 miles outside Weston-super-Mare.
Okay, and you came up with this idea of a rewards board. Would you like to explain to us how you came up with the idea and where the name came from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I originally came up with the concept about 10 years ago. I was working with a child who had autistic spectrum disorder, and I was doing some one-to-one teaching work with him. And we often couldn't find reward charts which really engaged him. We tried stickers and star charts. And the teaching therapy that we were using at the time focused very heavily on rewarding positive behaviours. So I came up with the idea of a vehicle for a reward chart, working on the concept of working towards good behaviour being a journey. Mm-hmm. It worked really well. And I really didn't do very much with it then until I had my own children. When I started potty training my now 6-year-old, I sort of got the files out and resurrected it. And it wasn't until a couple of friends asked me where I'd got it from that I thought there was some potential for development. So about 18 months ago, I started developing it quite intensively. I did a School for Startups course I've got no sort of engineering or manufacturing background at all. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I felt I needed that sort of input to move the business forward. And so I worked with various companies to get prototypes created. And yeah, over the last 18 months, I've done quite a lot of research, a lot of testing and development, and I've arrived at the product. Great.
You said that you've this realization came to you about 18 months ago. And so you've been planning it and testing it out since then. I mean, it's great to get that kind of feedback from your friends that there might be a demand for this kind of thing. I suppose that that wasn't your original intention, but it became obvious at some point that there might be something in it.
That's it. But I felt quite strongly that I needed to, to make sure that was the case, which was when the research kicked in, really. So I've spoken to lots of parents. I've worked quite intensively with an educational psychologist and also early years educators to make sure there genuinely was a niche there for it.
So during the research or testing phase, you obviously came up with a prototype, and was that easy to do?
It wasn't. As I say, in terms of my own experience, I hadn't developed a 3D product. All the work that I've done has been sort of 2D design. I worked with a company in Bristol who produced the prototype, so I had the artwork that I'd done, and they helped me to turn it really from a 2-dimensional concept to a 3-dimensional product.
Okay, and how many iterations did you go through before you settled on this particular version that you're now presenting on Crowdfunder?
Yeah, this is about Mark 4, I would say.
Mark 4. Great. I suppose for me, when I speak to people in the crowdfunding space, those people who are involved, the majority of them are involved in products like yourself. There is this challenge in getting the product right.
Yes.
And getting a functional working prototype. So I'm glad that you were able to go through that and to find the necessary people that would support you, because developing products is can be quite a challenge, especially if you don't know much about it, and finding the right people to assist you. And for everybody, that's somebody who's going to assist them is very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. My experience certainly shows, though, that if there are plenty of people out there with the right experience to help you, and actually quite keen to help with new products. It's just finding the right channel for it, really.
Great. So testing your prototype must have led you to change your mind on what the final product should look like. Explain to us what kind of testing you did and changes you made to arrive at the actual final version. So
I originally started out with what was a two-dimensional product and used stickers. And I realised, actually, as I was watching children use it, that what they do really like, they like the sort of tangible aspect of putting things on, which was why I started to look at the product being three-dimensional. And the design that I had, the red bus, did lend itself really well to becoming three-dimensional. And just adding that extra dimension just made it so much more engaging for children.
Well, you have the final product there with you. Would you like to show us what it looks like?
Okay, so here's the boxed version. So this is the...
Oh, wow, that's actually bigger than I thought it would look.
Oh, so it's about A4 in size. And then the characters are... So they're about 35 mil square, and they just sit on the bus, so they're magnetic. So in terms of the development, that was one of the challenges, was getting the polarity of the magnets just right and falling in line with the various safety precautions surrounding children's products. So all the passengers start life on a bus stop, and then the children, we're getting a bit of glare, aren't we, there?
That's okay, it's fine.
Okay. So the characters all begin life on the bus stop, and then each time the child earns their reward, they move from the bus stop onto the bus. So there's an instruction leaflet that goes with it, and also a set of stickers so that the bus can be personalised to the individual child.
Give us some of the scenarios that, say, a parent could use your product.
So in terms of, as we've been testing it, lots of parents have used it for potty training and toileting, nighttime routines, early waking. Particularly in the last few weeks, it's proved really successful with fussy eating and sort of meal times and manners. Lots of the parents I've been working with have actually been using it have had their bus on the table, and they've been encouraging the children to try new foods and to sit at the table and to eat, and then rewarding them as they go through the meal. So that's one behaviour it's worked really well with. With my own children, I've used it, particularly with sort of nighttime routines, with getting into bed, staying into bed, and then also to try to avoid the really early waking. So we reward not getting up too early.
Right. Okay, great. You've also had some professional advice on your particular product as well.
I have, yes. I've worked with an educational psychologist, and I was quite keen early on to work with. So lots of the people that I approached in terms of testing the reward chart instantly said, "Oh, I don't use reward charts; they don't work." And my research led me to the finding that actually reward charts are often used incorrectly, and a lack of consistency means that they very often don't work. So I worked with the educational psychologist, and we talked a lot about the sort of theory behind using a reward chart and how the consistency of using them is what it's all about. So I've then relayed that to people who've been testing it, and undoubtedly that's absolutely correct. So I've got a lot about that in the instruction leaflet to help people to understand the importance of really using it consistently with children.
Great. So you developed your product, you tested it, you found that there was a potential market for it, and then you were obviously looking for a way to fund it, to move it forward. And how did you come across crowdfunding as a potential way of unlocking funds for your project? And why did you choose it in the end as the way forward?
Okay, so quite early on, I attended a School for Startups course, and one of the areas that course talked about was funding for new businesses. Mm-hmm. So everything I've done until now, I've funded myself alongside. So I lecture part-time on a graphic design degree course, and I've just funded each stage as I've gone along. But I did become aware that if I wanted to move things along quicker, an injection of capital would really help that. So crowdfunding was brought to my attention via that course originally, and I started to look at crowdfunding campaigns, and it seemed a natural progression to use a rewards-based crowdfunding campaign because the product is a reward chart. So as I started to watch some campaigns, and I felt it could be a good platform for me.
Well, I think crowdfunding can be a great way to not only generate market validation for your product or brand awareness, or even to increase the size of your crowd in terms of people using your products, but it's obviously unlocks funding. So there are many benefits in my mind when it comes to crowdfunding. And did you recognize all of those benefits straight away, or did you focus initially in on the capital or the money that you could generate through a campaign?
No, I'd say it was equal in terms of raising capital, but also in terms of market validation. And that, I think, so I launched on the 11th of March, and I'm running for 30 days, and I've already realised that in terms of market validation, it's helping considerably. In terms of the interest that it's attracted, I've been really quite surprised at the sort of people that have been engaging, not necessarily just in terms of a funding point of view, but also in terms of just the sort of the level of interest.
Yeah, I've seen some of their comments on your crowdfunding campaign, just so that those people who are listening or viewing this right now, just to let them know that your campaign is live right at the moment. And,
absolutely, yes.
And I was reading through some of the comments, and you're quite right. The use cases that came through in those comments are quite varied. So I suppose that you're very pleased with that kind of feedback.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think there are people who I've spoken to as as I've gone through the development process, and I told them that I was going to be crowdfunding, and that they've enjoyed getting involved, I think. And in terms of the feedback that I've had, and I think what the crowdfunding has done in the last 2 weeks is certainly brought it to the attention of people it would have been more difficult to reach not having done that.
Fantastic. I like that. And when it comes to choosing the actual crowdfunding platform itself, there's quite a number of rewards-based crowdfunding platforms. The biggest one is in Kickstarter. Then you have Indiegogo. Why did you eventually end up choosing Crowdfunder for your platform?
Part of the reason I've chosen Crowdfunder is everything in terms of the product is UK based. So I've managed with a lot of work to secure a UK manufacturer for the product, and that came about in the research as being quite important to potential users, and became really fundamental to the project. So actually using a UK based crowdfunding platform seemed to fall in line with that.
And you're also awarded Made in Britain status as well, so I suppose it all went together.
That's right, it has. I mean, it's all gone hand in hand. And when I was doing my initial research, lots of the parents were saying, it would be really nice to have a product that was made in the UK. And I started out with that as my intention. I realised quite early on how difficult that was going to be. But yeah, with a sort of a bit of determination, I have managed to make that the case. And so to use Crowdfunder did seem to be quite an important part of that, I think.
How long would you say that you've been planning this crowdfunding campaign before you launched?
So I would say I've had in mind for 12 months that I would crowdfund, and yeah, I've been putting various things in place in preparation for that. Certainly in terms of the people that I've been working with, I'd mentioned that all along, that was my intention. And I've been gradually building up, my social media presence with a view to doing that. And as I say, talking to people as I've gone through the process about doing that.
And when it comes to just prior to launch, you've got to make a commitment, which I think is a very big commitment, and that is to establish what your target is going to be. So your target that you settled in on was 6,000.
Right.
How did you come to that 6,000 figure? And was it easy? I mean, how much of a challenge was it to eventually settle on an amount?
Yeah, I had identified two specific things that I wanted a crowdfund for. One of them is for the final stage of the app, so the development, the back end work to do that, and then also some of the associated costs with the packaging. So that the figure for those two, and it's actually on the page, the breakdown of how I'll use the money. So that was the figure, and that seemed really in terms of. So in terms of the size of the list that I had, and in terms of the sort of social media reach I had, £6,000 seemed to be about the right figure, in terms of, the amount of money that I'm looking for, but also in terms of the reach that I feel I've got currently.
Great, because my experience is that a lot of people, when their campaign fails, and I have no doubt yours is going to succeed. I have a very good feeling about that. That often failure is attached to the actual target set for the campaign, and more often than not, I see targets that are well out of the reach of the size of the project creators crowd.
Yes, I mean, I've watched lots of projects over the last 6 or 8 months, and I can see that that's often the case. Is that I think you've got to be realistic about the reach that you've got, and also, I think you need to be quite specific about what you're going to use the funding for. That's certainly the people that have been contacting me over the last couple of weeks. They are really interested to know, what you're going to use the money for. And I think that's quite important to be specific about.
On your campaign, I see that you've got a graphic there which shows where the money is going to go to, and I think that's a great way to quickly and easily show where the funding's going to go.
Yes.
What part of putting together your campaign has been the most challenging in your experience? I know we haven't completed it, so there might be 1 or 2 big things that you might still come up against, but up until this particular point, what do you feel has been a big challenge for you? And it differs from person to person.
I mean, I think initially the actual, so in terms of doing all the work in preparation for it, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And as a graphic designer, actually putting the page together, I enjoyed doing that. I think the actual going live feels like a huge challenge. I think when you press that button and you suddenly realise it's out there, that does feel like a really big deal. I mean, I did a lot of work. So in the weeks leading up to it, I spoke to lots of people. So sort of people within my kind of close friends and family network. I thought it was important to actually to sort of phone and speak to them. And actually just having the time to do that is quite challenging. As I say, I've done it alongside working as well. And there's also still quite a lot of work to do in terms of the development of the product. So I think you have to be really careful in terms of scheduling your time. And I think I had a timetable, and actually veering away from that, you've got to really sort of stick to it and do all the things that you plan to do prior to the launch. And actually in those first couple of days that really paid off. So having a timetable of who I was going to speak to and when, sort of planning all the emails, that in itself is it's a lot of work.
Sure, and you have to fit that into your busy work schedule and looking after the family and
that's it.
All of that kind of thing. Yeah. I noticed that you had a launch event for your campaign. You got a whole lot of people together just before you launched, or was it on the day of the launch? I can't remember.
I did.
And how important was that, and did that work for you?
Yeah, that was great. I did that on the Saturday. So I launched on Tuesday, and I did that on the Saturday prior to the Tuesday going live. So I couldn't quite decide in the run up to it how to do the launch. And because it was a children's product, I initially thought perhaps I'd do something where I got some families together with children. But one of the things that I thought that might do was sort of distract from me being able to talk about the product in detail. So what I decided to do was I got 10 people who have in some way been associated with the project together, and I put on a lunch at a restaurant in Bristol. I showed my crowdfunding film. I took the product. I had cupcakes with the logo made, and just set the whole thing up to be sort of informal and good fun. And it worked amazingly well. And I really felt that those 10 people were a real core to the launch the following Tuesday. So I talked them through how it worked. One of the things I think is probably quite important to say as well is I have realised as I've worked towards launching the crowdfunding campaign, lots of people I came across didn't actually know very much at all about crowdfunding. And so having those 10 people who I talked to quite intensively over the lunch, but very informally, about the way that crowdfunding works and how they could help me by sharing it with their close networks, that was really crucial, I think, to the success in the first couple of days. And that they're still very much on board with it, and really eager to see how it's going. So I think it was a very worthwhile thing to do.
Well, you point out a very important fact there, and that is the majority of people still do not know what crowdfunding is about. So as part of your preparation, you do have to educate your crowd, if you like, in terms of what it is and how it works. And so you did come across that, you identified it, and I'm glad that you were able to address it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to have that core. So particularly as I made the decision to crowdfund on my own. I mean, I can see how important it is to have those people to sort of back you up a bit. It's probably a bit easier when there's more than one of you running a campaign. But I felt certainly in terms of what I was doing, it was important to have that input. And each of the people there had some link with the campaign. The educational psychologist who I've worked with, she was there. Also, people that have just been a really good sounding board. The lady that's done lots of the PR for me, she attended. And so they all had some link with the product and the project. And I think in terms of probably of all the people that were there were only one or two who really knew anything about crowdfunding. So to be able to share that with them, and for them then to share that with their networks, was definitely really worthwhile.
Great, that's a good point to bring up. Thank you. In terms of gaining extra publicity for your campaign, I noticed that on your crowdfunding campaign that there's a link to a newspaper article as well as to a radio interview. How much of that was it difficult to set up, and have you any indication as to whether that has worked for you in any particular way in raising awareness and bringing people to your campaign page?
I'd certainly say in terms of getting the media on board, it has taken some persistence. So I sent out press releases. I sent those out on the Thursday prior to the launch on the Monday, but made very clear that I was launching on the Tuesday. And what I then did, I followed up on the launch day. Once there were some funds on the page, I actually phoned all of the newspapers, radio stations that I'd sent press releases to. I gave them an update once there was just over £1,000 in the fund. And I did, with two of them, I actually stayed on the line. I said, I've sent you a press release. Are you aware of it? And they said they'd have a look and get back to me. And I stayed on the phone. I said, that's okay, I'll wait, have a look and check that you've got it, or I'll send it again. Okay. And it was certainly the local paper that have published the article. It was definitely the kind of persistence of saying, right, that's okay, I'll hold, I'll wait, I'll just check you've got it. So I've got another article that comes out in the Bristol press later this week. And yes, I was interviewed the weekend after the campaign launch by the local radio station, and I certainly didn't see a sort of surge in pledges on the back of any of those. But I think just in terms of raising awareness, it definitely helps. So
now, during all of those opportunities, you've used the word "tots up." Now,
I have, yeah.
that is the name of your brand. Can you explain to us where that name actually came from?
So,
or how?
Yeah, that was to actually arrive with the name Tots Up took a long time. I went through quite a long and lengthy process to come up with that, but it was really important for me that it included, connotations of children, hence the tots, but also that it was about positivity. I think there's a little plus symbol within the logo. And it, for me, it's about sort of adding value and about positivity. But it was a journey to get to that. So, but equally so, I mean, I think having a brand is a really important part of this.
Sure.
I spoke to somebody yesterday, a PR agency, in fact, and she'd actually, so before I got anywhere in terms of talking about what I'd phoned for, she had seen it on Facebook. She was very familiar with the red bus as a product and also with the brand. So I do think that it's an important part of this.
And with all these media opportunities, it just helps reinforce it.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
I must compliment you on your, not only the name, it's nice, short and memorable, if you like, but also on all the graphics that you have associated with the product.
Thank you. It's probably slightly easier for me than some because that's my background as a graphic designer. But again, I do think to have graphics, I had professional photographs done, and I have to say that was a really worthwhile spend in terms of my budget, to have really good product photography done. I did some initial ones myself, but they definitely don't have the impact that professional photographs have done. So I think that's definitely a worthwhile investment.
When someone visits a campaign page, or when you eventually get someone to come along, they will consume the video first. They will then read the text underneath the video and look at the images. They'll then take a judgment on your target, and then they'll have a look at the rewards. And it's actually the rewards that will finally get someone to haul out their credit or debit cards. So I've had a look through your rewards. I see that you've got some low ones there to get people who are not able to buy the product at the product price, but to at least make a contribution. How did you decide on your rewards? I know it was related to your actual product itself. And will you be adding any additional rewards in the 2 weeks that you have left?
I have. I've got a special edition reward that I'm going to add later this week. But yeah, so I think having a product made it actually fairly easy to come up with the rewards initially. So I've got the red bus with passengers as a reward. I'm also offering the app as a reward. And then I've done some special edition passengers, which I did specifically for the campaign. So those hadn't been launched in advance of the campaign. And certainly with people who were familiar with the product, that's been quite nice for them. And I've had a few people who've said, well, it's nice. So people that have tested the bus, and actually in the run up to the campaign, one of the things I did as people were asking about buying the bus, because I wasn't actually at a point to be able to sell it, but I had samples. I sent samples out free of charge in return for people filling in a product survey, and also doing reviews on Facebook, and that's had a huge impact on the campaign. I think I've got about 10 really positive Facebook reviews, the majority of whom are from people who don't know me, which makes them much more impartial. But also those people have then pledged for additional rewards to go alongside the sample product that they've got. So that's been good.
Great. And I wanted to ask you how you're feeling at this particular point in the campaign. You're about halfway through, and money normally tends to come in at the beginning of the campaign, tends to flatten out in the middle, and then it tends to pick up towards the end. Are you worried about reaching your target, or how do you feel when you get up every morning wanting to get a feel for how things are going? So
I mean, certainly the first few days was, I was elated. The speed at which the initial pledges came in was great. I had lots of people primed up to back the project early on. I am feeling that kind of mid-campaign lull a little bit. and certainly over the next couple of days, I've got lots of things planned to try and give things a bit of a boost again. But it definitely, somebody told me in the run up to it that it is an absolute roller coaster, and I couldn't agree more. So yesterday morning felt a bit flat. I mean, some pledges came in as the day went on. But I don't think you can quite be prepared for how emotionally attached you become to this page.
Sure. Checking out all the stats all the time.
That's it. I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting thing to do. But it is, it is quite tiring to kind of keep the momentum going, and you do feel very much that you have got to be sort of constantly pushing things forward and keeping things going. So yeah, I've got some more press contacts to follow up this week, and I've got a special reward which I'm going to add to the campaign later in the week. Last week I added a little sort of animated GIF again, which I put out on social media to try to increase pledges, and that did have some success.
Okay, great.
So
campaigns on most rewards-based crowdfunding platforms allow for a flexible funding target or a fixed funding target, and you've gone for a fixed funding target, which means that if you don't reach a target, you don't get any of your funds.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, that's actually the better way to go ahead, because a lot of people will wonder, well, can you go ahead with your project if you don't get all the funding that you require to move forward? So that must be quite nail biting. You have to reach your target.
That's it. It certainly puts the pressure on a bit, but then equally so, I think if you're going to commit to running a campaign, that I think actually that added pressure probably makes you work harder.
Sure. Just to wrap up our discussion, if I may, and I wanted to ask you, in terms of your crowdfunding campaign, which strategy, tool, or tip would you like to share with other people who may want to run their own crowdfunding campaigns? What has worked particularly well for you at this particular point that you would suggest to people really do not miss when it comes to putting all the success factors that they need to put into place for a successful campaign?
I would certainly say, in terms of friends and family, your closest supporters, they are absolutely crucial to the early success of the campaign. And actually, I think taking the time to phone them, to speak to them personally, and to involve them and engage them with the campaign is incredibly important. I hadn't realised quite how important that support was going to be in the first few days, and it's definitely paramount to the successful launch of the campaign, I would say. What certainly has been really interesting is that I know you and I spoke about that the first 30% coming from your really close network, and that begins to spread for the second 30%. And interestingly, as I hit 33% of my target, I began to get some pledges in from people that I don't know. So I think that goes to show that 30% coming in from people that you do know is really important. I think to get that in place and to get them poised and ready to support you very early on in the campaign is really good.
No, it's crucial. It's crucial. The likelihood of you reaching your target is increased dramatically, well over 80%, if you manage to get about a third of your funds within the first within the first 48 hours of launching.
Right. Okay. So, and I think, as I say, it's also, I mean, lots of those people that I engage with early on, so sort of friends and family, they are really rooting for this now. I think again that the really important thing is to get them to continue to share the message for me, because I think that there is a danger that once it looks like things are going quite well, that the people sort of then assume that it's all going to be okay. So I think again that is keeping up that momentum and encouraging them to sort of keep spreading the word on your behalf. So
which tool would you say has been the most useful for you? Has it been email? Has it been the Launch Rock page that you collected emails from before you launched your campaign? What tool would you say has helped you the most in terms of getting people to commit to sign up?
Definitely emails, undoubtedly. I mean, I did some MailChimp emails, So I did day 1 and day 3, and being able to look at the analytics of those, they had a huge impact on the campaign. But also, I mean, more informally, emailing friends and family as well in the run up to it. The email definitely has had the most impact on the campaign. I mean, the social media side of it now is picking up, but the in terms of sort of a conversion to pledging, definitely the emails.
Great. Where would you like to send people to find out more about your campaign and your product? So
the website, so totsup.co.uk, there's a link to the crowdfunding page there, or to the crowdfunder page. So that's crowdfunder.co.uk/totsup.
Brilliant. And I hope those people who see this see how great your product is and go off and support you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So I wish you all the best with your campaign, and I'm looking forward to D-Day, as it were.
Just under 2 weeks.
Just under 2 weeks.
Yep.
So I'm sure it'll all work out. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. I think it'll help a lot of people understand the process that you went through, what needs to be done, how much effort is involved.
Thank you.
You'd be amazed how many people actually start a crowdfunding campaign without a crowd.
Right.
So I think the journey, listening to your journey, I think that is something of extreme value for a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that with us, and good luck with your campaign.
Thank you. Great talking to you, Anthony. Thank you.